right. At the end of the day, this is the story. All right. This has now been how long? When did you go up to see the stuff?
2017, I believe.
4 or 5 years ago.
I think it was
We went out,
2017 is the first time
and
we
this
were there.
stuff has been so. As you know, Charlie, as you know, this is not the kind of stuff that we look for. So I was in that, when I was digging through this house. Oh, okay, there's some stuff in the crates, and every time you see this, everyone's like, tourists are blah blah blah. When we're doing our triage, when we're walking through somebody's house, we always totally dismiss this kind of stuff, and I just thought it was neat. I didn't even dig into it, that stuff was in there. We were looking for.
But you were kind of stopped in your tracks with, this amazing collection altogether. As you were opening the crates, you were finding more and more of it.
Yeah, but we didn't, in the house, we didn't really. Our goal when we're at somebody's house is to get the place cleared. So we're trying to get the place cleared. So I certainly wasn't, and going through, and I'm not even still going to do that. I got Charlie to do that. To go through,
and I have Tiki to do that.
Yeah. So like when I see a bunch of ephemera and stuff, I'm like, oh, okay, there's a bunch of stuff here to look at later. Let's look at it later and just get the house cleared. So I saw some of the masks, and there are still a few. Like I showed you that one picture from the garage. They kept a couple, and one was enormous. It was like the size of this table. Long, and
hopefully we'll be able to claw that back at some point.
I should hope.
But the collection, as you were pulling it out, just to have everything grouped together, all the daggers, all of the masks.
Well, that was the first time.
To be a really big group of stuff.
Yeah, we didn't even go through it. Most of the stuff went to John. All the other parts of the estate that the stuff we usually look at, the paintings, the vases, all this other kind of stuff.
Because this was an estate, it was a full-blown estate clean out, and this is just a tiny bit of what was in a house. In fact, this wasn't in the house, right?
But
it was like in the garage, right?
His father had, I think that was the first thing that you realized, that his father was the block print collector.
Japanese block prints.
So that was one of
So
the
it was an
first
important
things.
and a book collector. So that became obvious that there was serious collectors there. But this was something that sort of revealed itself after the clean out.
Yeah. So the house was probably turn of the century, maybe a little earlier, maybe 1890, somewhere around there. So it had that kind of basement, and then went out to the garage. It was like a lower level, and it was just concrete, and these were just in a corner of a room.
All sealed in those crates.
Sealed in those crates, and there was some stuff lying on top. And what they actually, the stuff that didn't fit in that crates is actually there was a room, this really huge, gorgeous fireplace, and it had built-in seats all the way around. And the built-in seats were the kind that they flip up. The seat flips up for storage, and that's where all the masks were. He shoved them in there because obviously all that stuff's not going to fit in here. So all these bigger things were, even those long spears, because these, the room was enormous, so they were really long pews. And they open up, and you open them up, and there's spears inside, and this and that, and all these things. Only the smaller objects and the bags were folded up stuffed in these.
And then, of course, the documentation too. Right. So all of his journals, handwritten journals. All of the typed manuscripts, which were not ordered the way that we have them now. All of the letters from Margaret Mead, and from all of the papers from mounting the expedition, the receipts. This is how much liquor you gotta buy. This is this is where we're buying our film.
Yeah, that was his
And then his notes to his secretary to say type this up. So we have pages and pages of handwritten document on yellow paper.
Margaret Mead,
and then the numbers are all wrong, and then there's a note to the secretary, well, you gotta flip it over, and then it goes the other way around, and then we see the typewritten thing, where the secretary had done that all correctly. So you see every stage of what he was doing. So that's just amazing.
So 5 years.
Well, let's talk about the time frame from how it was 2017.
So then we had it at our other location, and it was just at that point we didn't have the ability to go through it as much, and we thought, this is something really specialized, and
it went somewhere.
And it went, the whole collection went somewhere else, and
it was ultimately returned because we are the only auction house that would spend the time in telling the entire story of the entire entire
No,
exhibition.
yeah,
Nobody
this
else
is-
would have put the time.
It wouldn't make any sense. It doesn't economically make sense
Right.
to spend. We've done this now. COVID helped.
Right.
All right, because there's a lot of stuff that we could do, but nobody spends a year and a half cataloging. All right, this many objects. How many objects in the sale? How many lots?
250?
All right, so you get 250 lots, and each one has been meticulously researched, cataloged, photographed. This doesn't make any sense.
I think the interesting a part of like, all right, so it did go somewhere else, and we were told by that one of the larger auction houses in the world that this stuff isn't
Tourist.
it's tourist art, which was. I was like, well, something is wrong there, and then, so we got the stuff back. But then, and we've just came off of doing Steinbeck, so we knew how to go through everything, look at everything. That's why I came to you. But then, I think it should be like, how did Tiki get involved from you? I think that should.
Well, so no,
I mean,
going back to the whole tourist thing, I think that I was shocked and surprised, being like, if anything to have as much provenance as this collection has, from his education to being told to go there, we have.
But a lot of that
how
wasn't
everything
obvious.
went there.
A lot of it wasn't obvious because remember, what we have hindsight. We're looking at a forensic level inspection of every single thing that came out of that house. Nobody had an opportunity to do that. And if you look at it at first glance, it's like it's a bunch of tribal stuff.
it's too good to be true.
Yeah, it's like, or what is it?
Yeah, but it's then when you like take the letters out of the envelopes
Right.
and
Yeah.
carefully open and read, and you're like, whoa,
But every letter.
every letter, and then some of them are handwritten.
You guys have had the pleasure
And
reading
there's
every
no
single
return
thing.
address, so you don't know who it was written by, and then you see the signature, and you're like, oh, that looks like Margaret Mead's signature, and then you realize she was the one telling him to go there.
Yeah.
I mean, so like a normal person's not going to open all the
Yeah.
envelopes
Even-
and take a look, right?
Yeah, for that other auction house, when they
Any
take
other
the
auction.
time
Any
anyway
other auction.
to go through like we've done. We knew what we had. They just saw a bunch of stuff in boxes, looked at it, and go, "This can't all possibly be pre-contact. This doesn't just get
If they
showed
knew
up
that
here."
mattered.
Right. Well, I think they knew. I mean, we sent it to their ethnographic department.
But I think at the end of the day, it's also
Money.
just serendipity too. I mean, part of this is, look, COVID gave us a leg up. I end up with a new neighbor.
That's what I want to hear. That's what I
So, all right,
This is a great
so
story.
actually, this is the truth of it. The truth of it is, I'm already working on sort of the hardest part. Well, the hardest of the whole thing was the photographs. Photographs, without a doubt, the hardest thing to sort and to deal with. And I started with those. And I'm working from in COVID land at home, mounting them, sorting them. The way that they kind of came from LeDoux, these were the large format photographs. We hadn't even found the rest of it. And then I say to my new neighbor, because who just recently moved, I said, well, and she's like, well, what do you do? I said, well, I work at auction galleries. I said, well, this. I said, you know what? And I work for collectors and I do research, and this is what I'm working on now. And I'm like, and I pull out photographs of, it was on my porch actually. She's sitting on my steps, and I pull out one of the binders and show her these photographs, and she's like, I don't know anything about her background. This is just my neighbor who just moved in.
Yeah.
And it turns out, it's like, I know this because I studied this. I'm like, studied this? Yeah, I studied anthropology at University of Queensland, and I specialized in Papua New Guinea. I'm like, ding.
So who is interested in this collection?
What do you think? Who would care about this collection?
Well, certainly oceanic art collectors. So there's lots of oceanic art out there that was collected post-war. Not lots, but a bit. But pre-war, nobody has that. So you go to the museum, to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, all their collections from the 1960s, 50s, nothing is pre-war. So that is actually for art collectors. And art collectors will look at things like, the aesthetics of it, and the surrealists, and there's a lot of tribal art, whatever, that art collectors will say, yeah, this is in the surrealist realm, whatever. but they also want provenance. They want to know that it was made for a purpose other than art. So none of these objects were made to be art pieces. None of them at all. It was like the farthest away from, just like, what is, so they're all really real. So I think art collectors will find that even more, aside from the aesthetics, that is, that's a complete advantage.
Oh yeah.
That's a real juxtaposition if you're thinking between us and them. We go like form and function. You're thinking about. They're just totally using it for function. Like they don't have the opportunity that I want to make art because they're surviving.
Yeah.
But everything is artistic.
Yeah, of
everything
course,
is
ceremonial. Like
Right.
everything was used for, rite of passage or for war or for a funeral or a birthing, fertility. So everything had a real purpose and a real use.
And then museums might be interested because, look, most of this stuff is from one region
Yeah.
within the seepage.
Yeah,
So
one place.
one place, and there isn't an awful lot.
But there's
From
one,
this,
there's one museum that has a similar collection to this that Pierre LeDoux did send.
Yeah. So he sent stuff to the American Museum of Natural History. Oh my goodness, they have so much of his stuff.
They have two
in storage.
Yeah, do you know how much? Do you know how many objects? I counted them up. There was about 250.
Yeah.
So
So
we
a lot.
have as much here as the Met, the American Museum of Natural History rather has from the same collection.
So he sent stuff to museums, right? So naturally he sent stuff to American Museum of Natural History, and they have a whole bunch in storage. They have one piece on display in the Hall of Pacific Peoples. It looks like that one, but ours is actually nicer.
Oh,
But if you look at their catalog entries, so it's all public access.
Yeah, we put links to them in the catalog
yeah.
so you can see, and it says that it's a gift from Pierre LeDoux.
Yeah, and it's from 1936,
Yeah.
and they're very, very short descriptions, but they don't have an awful lot about Louis Pierre LeDoux. I mean, according to their catalogs, their database. So by now we have collected so much more about his expedition, what he was doing and what he collected. So it's really quite amazing. So a museum like that, I mean, this could be a whole display.
Oh yeah, certainly.
And then you go to the Met and there's nothing. Like I said, the Met has only things from the 60s, 70s, right?
Yeah, we had talked about trying to make this into like a whole traveling exhibit of, going to museum to museum, because it would be amazing, and that's one of the things I always feel during these auctions is when you have the whole collection, especially in a smaller room like this, you just feel all the energy and all of the, everything. This is 1 year of his life and everything he saw and did and collected and wrote.
And this is not going to be together like this again. We're going to bring
It's always so sad to see it separated and have, some of these pieces will end up in private collectors' homes and only enjoyed by one person.
Well, but a lot of people that do this, I mean, I think show what they have, maybe even publish some stuff locally, and it just gets out to a wider audience. And just being, it's better than being in a box in the basement in the in the Hudson River Valley in a house.
Some of the all the booklets of the photos we did, I think would be a great book. Of they're kind of grouped together by what they're doing. Basket weaving, the funeral one. This one's all these items, particularly in his home. Yeah. But they're, the basket, how they dye all the grasses. So I think that together with the manuscript and the photos, it could be an amazing book about the New York and the Seabrook people.
I have a question. I don't know if you found when you were looking. The stuff that went to the Museum of Natural History, wasn't everything came back here first and then he dispersed it, or did he send stuff directly from there to the museum?
He sent some stuff directly. There. So we have, it's a handwritten note. Seriously, it's pencil-written note saying 7 crates to American Museum of Natural History, 3 crates to the Peabody at Harvard.
So the Peabody has stuff also, and the Museum of Natural History.
But the Peabody, in in other correspondence with somebody else, it turns out that they misspelled his name and spelled it L-A-D-E-U-X instead of L-E. So when you search it, you can't find it. Apparently she corrected that. But there's very little that, so I don't know. I mean, the museums have a hard time of documenting everything in their databases, and perhaps some of their databases aren't digital yet. I don't know. So we found most of the stuff at the Natural History Museum. We know stuff went to Harvard. We know stuff also went to the museum in Berlin, the Ethnological Museum in Berlin.
But this collection is stuff that he kept for himself.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
So his handwritten note, it's at 13 crates to himself.
Yeah.
So he's just in this one village, right? Or did he go through a whole? He was just.
He went on like day or week long trips to other places.
Because this is a huge volume. Because there's not that many people, right? If you think about, taking 500 pieces away from an area. Were they not using these pieces? It seems like a large amount of stuff to pull out of just one small little town and what's around it. Or were they always making new? Did they use them until they went and make new ones?
It looks like they're pretty old.
Some of them
actually
were rescued from being burned.
Yeah.
Well, that's true too.
So for example, the Kakar spear was one of the most what do you call it? Spiritual, potent objects, and so some of the very, very super zealous missionaries wanted to burn and break all of them. And so he basically saved some of those. We don't know exactly what that was. We know Kakar spear, but some other stuff I'm sure too. And some of the masks as well, because they're all representing strong ancestral spirits. And the missionaries wanted to get rid of that, right? So they wanted to bring Christianity in. So of course this stuff was, but then the local people as well, they're not entirely sure. Like, shall we really burn all this stuff? Some people said, yeah, we want to. Others said, no, just in case we better keep. So,
So when
and then also he himself traveled a little bit within the region, right? But they trade, right?
Yes.
So they trade. So it's not necessary that every single one of these are from Murik.
And I think that's
people
what you
traded
can see that in the
themselves.
masks, because as we say, the Sepik style is kind of the beak-like
Yeah.
nose, and some of it are not beak-like,
Yeah.
so they might be traded from other villages too.
Like we have that one over there in that corner, I think is from the Ramu River, which is kind of a tributary, I think, of the Sepik. So it's kind of in that same area, but not immediately in his area. This thing here too is not exactly from Murik.
I mean, so we look at this object, and this is
This is what they call an open work figure. I haven't been able to figure out exactly what it was used for, but I mean, it looks like.
I think it was a dance wand. That
Oh,
they would use
yeah,
during
that's
ceremonies.
yeah.
So I
dance
mean,
one,
we look at we look at something like this, and it's not like it's been in use the entire time and got this way from 1936. It was like this
This is how it was
in 1936.
Yeah.
So if you look at something like this, you're saying this thing's got to be 50, even though being humid there and everything, it's got to be 50 years older. So this is probably a 19th century piece. Could quite possibly be that old.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
And you look at like the design elements, the fingers over here, it's very typical of that general region. The stripiness over here is unusual for the Murik, but it's more common in some other areas. And it's the traditional. Things change, of course, right? So like modern day sculpture is going to be very different, but this still shows the traditional, I think.
So
and you can see a little bit.
We were only able to date the collection, as being,
1936.
Yeah, but
these pieces were most likely created way before
this
that.
wasn't carved in 1936
It wasn't
handed
carved
to
and
him.
handed
You know what I
to him.
mean? All this stuff, they weren't like sitting there carving this.
No, this was something
probably
clever.
later on when the sailors and everyone's coming back and they want stuff, in the 40s.
Well, and certainly some of the basket bags they would have made as trade items, maybe a month before he got there or while he was there.
Right.
I mean, you can see they're completely new.
They
they're
almost
really
don't
unique.
look real. They're so
But
real.
those are real trade items that were made probably around 1936. And so some of these things you see in books, right? That are like in
Oh wow,
old
that
books.
looks
Yeah, it looks
That looks remarkably
Like this.
similar.
right?
Yeah.
And
what,
so it's, you know, it's, if you look carefully in with the books that are out there,
Yeah,
they've been
this-
documented.
This whole
as well.
collection is a book waiting to be happen.
Yeah.
Waiting to happen. You know? I mean, all right, so you know what we haven't spoke about, which I think is really important,
Yeah.
is his manuscript and his field notes and his cataloging of all of the ceremonies.
Yeah, it's crazy. So he's got the field notebooks right there. I mean, these are actually, I think, what he did in the field. I mean, it's handwritten,
Yeah.
right?
And they're
Handwritten in his very messy handwriting. And then what he wrote in these notebooks here, he transcribed, typed. He was really bad typist. He couldn't type well at all. We find that out when Margaret Mead sends him a letter and say, yeah, I understand you're bad at typing, but get your act together, get me a manuscript.
yeah.
Anyway, so finally, his manuscript, his typed up manuscript, it's just a draft. It's all in here. It's like chapter by chapter.
how many
his
pages
diary.
should that be?
I think you scanned it in. There's a lot of pages.
There's lots of pages.
So if they made a book, it would be like a few 100-page book.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so together the manuscript and all the photos, I mean, that's a whole...
Yeah,
you know,
like 500,
snippet.
700,000 pages.
Wow.
And I mean, it's a draft. So,
Yeah.
you know, part of it is his diary. Part of it is observations that he's consolidated into, okay, this is all about puberty ceremony. But you know, he got all that information by living there day to day. So maybe he went and attended a puberty ceremony, and so that would have been in his diary, and then he has to collect all of that and make it into like a thematic thing.
Right.
So we have a bit of both. We have a bit of the diary and the thematic things as well. It's quite amazing. And then we've got his index, his way of organizing it, which I don't know, Jill, you and I have tried to figure it out, and we're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, there is some collection of ceremonies. There's different things that they had used, people's names. Like this is
Yes.
somebody's
Yeah, that's
name
one
who
of the
lives in
first-
the village.
Yes.
Trying to think. Yeah, it was just kind of everything. His way of breaking down and knowing and remembering each thing that he learned.
Yeah, he did it. He didn't do it because that's when I did figure through this in the beginning. I noticed it wasn't like some chronological thing. Like day one, this happened. Day two,
No.
it was like this is all about this subject. This is all about this subject. No matter where he gleaned or when he gleaned the information. Right.
So it's cool.
Yeah, and I mean, he was around the same people, and like even flipping through the photos, you see some of the same people
Yeah.
with the body adornments. Some of them
Yeah.
very similar to the ones that we have here with the
Yeah.
dog teeth, and you know, so it's just. You know, the names of the people, I wouldn't be able to pronounce any of them, but
Yeah.
you know, so-and-so
Like
smoking a pipe, you know? These are the things that you see in the photos.
Yeah, so you read through his stuff, and certain names keep on coming. So when we see we've got pictures of the funeral, right? So we know, I think he went to 3 funerals in the 6 months he was there. One of them was Moyega. So and we see pictures of the deceased, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, that must have been Moyega. And you flip it over, the picture, and it says at Moyega's funeral.
Yes, he was
Thing.
really good
And
about
it's-
writing.
Yeah,
You know, what was going on in the photos on the back of the smaller photos.
yeah.
So we have that information of who and what they were doing, what they were using, and why.
And then you have all the things that he did before going into the field, his discussions with Margaret Mead. There's a big, I mean, he also gave advice after or while he was in the field to other people coming to the field. And the descriptions of the people he met along the way, I mean, it's quite amazing because it's so personal.
Yeah.
So there are famous people that he describes in a certain way. We have, and then Margaret Mead also gave him advice before he went in. And there's one document, for example, where she describes how local people described her and her husband Gregory Bateson was a really tall, slim guy. And so the locals have local names for these people who traveled through. And that's all documented. You're like,
That's
wow,
really
it makes
cool.
it so real, right?
And we have to remember, it's not like he, and how old was he when he did this? Like 25, 20?
Yeah,
how old
Right
was
out
he?
of college.
He was right out of college. It wasn't like he jumped on a plane, flew out to California, and then flew to
No.
Papua New Guinea.
And
You know, it's
That's what
it's
all the
like
paperwork is really unique to see. You know, you have the pictures and the paperwork and letters from his college friends,
Yeah.
and then you have him starting to reach out, figure out where to go, and the equipment list of what he needed, and then we have all the receipts of the things he bought to trade, bought to use. You know, some alcohol and whiskey.
Yeah.
You know, and then we have a thing of the water purifying
Yeah.
capsules that came, and I have a receipt for that too. So the things that he bought to, you know, prepare for the trip. And then we also have, and then remember there's also the receipt for all the camera equipment and
Right.
how that had to go on a boat, or how they were trying to get it to him before the boat left.
Right.
But it's just a really unique collection of everything up to and after, you know, of his whole expedition in 1936.
these objects jump to some of the prices that we see. What I do understand is that there was a expedition in the 1880s by Germans,
Yeah.
and the stuff from that expedition, that stuff
the pre-contact
is
stuff.
millions. That's when we have these little pieces that are going for $2.5 million,
Yeah.
$3.5 million,
Yeah.
like the crazy stuff. But then there's still some stuff not from that expedition that I see hitting hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I don't know if something's going to go crazy. It's got to be. I mean,
I think it must be a combination of the aesthetic and the provenance.
okay.
Right, so like that little guy, there's a similar one that was, I think, sold for a huge amount of money, but it was from, you know, early 1900s
Okay, yeah,
or 1800s. Small guy like that. So I don't know.
We don't
I mean,
know what's
all
gonna
of
happen.
it. Yeah.
I
Because
just-
I mean,
like that
part
mask.
of it is aesthetic. and
That mask
part of
right
Pointy
there,
nose.
that flute
I-
mask. I mean,
I think it's fantastic.
it is like that.
Yeah.
Could, yeah, that's a fantastic mask. That's an old mask, but that can also be hanging in someone's apartment in Manhattan,
Oh,
just
my
with
goodness.
light on it,
Yeah.
on like and that's it. You know what I mean? And that, I mean, that mask could be. I don't know. You know what's the top?
I know,
levels
I'm
of it?
so excited for auction
I
day
know.
to see what all this stuff brings. And I mean, we've been involved in this collection for over a year and a half and
For
working
4
on
years.
it. Me and you have been involved
Right.
longer than them. But yeah, I'm just so
Yeah.
excited for auction day. So this auction is taking place November 16th at noon Eastern Standard Time. We currently have a lot of international bidders. There seems to be a lot of people from Australia and Belgium.
There's 2 people flying
People
in.
are flying in. We will have a live auction. We will be broadcasting online.
But it's already online.
It's already online. WillowAuctionHouse.com is where you can find us. It's online, and yeah, we're going to be filming in live. We will have a live audience of people bidding. You can come and preview it. I would highly suggest whoever is interested to come see this collection in this room, just to feel and see it all together, because this is going to be, what is it? We've got a few more weeks before this collection gets
2
split
weeks.
up.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, and then this whole collection gets split up, and
Unless somebody wants to come in and purchase everything,
whole collection.
and get the high winning bid on each of the things.
yeah,
But yeah,
it'd be great if we could stay together.
very excited.